So I just finished my newest turtleneck tube vest and I love it. I haven't even woven in the ends yet. But I'm so excited to think about what can I do with the leftover yarn from my sweaters. Well, how about making wrist warmers? Talk about not even weaving in the ends yet. This is one of my favorite projects to use up leftover yarn, and it's so much fun. What if you don't have enough? Then you can make stripes. How pretty will that be? Oh my goodness. So I think this is one of my most fun ways to use up leftover yarn. And one idea is keep your things labeled, like when you have different worsted weight together, especially if they're the same kind of yarn, pop them in a bag and label them. If you've got DK weight, if you've got fingering, keep the ideas together, and you can always combine 2 strands of fingering to make a little heavier weight yarn, or a strand of fingering and lace to make a DK weight. So let's get started. I will show you some tips on how I like to set up and knit my wrist warmers using double points. I've got some really fun tips and I think they're going to help you out. Okay, so our pattern calls for 40 stitches to be knit in the round, and we start out with a 1x1 ribbing, which is knit 1, purl 1. But you know what, when you're casting on stitches onto double points, it's really hard and things fall out and there's just not enough to hold on. When you have those cast on stitches, it's so easy for that double point to slip out that my super tip is, instead of trying to cast on part of them on here, part of them on here, part of them on here, hold on to it, I cast on all of my stitches on one double point, turn my work, and then knit off of that onto the rest of the double points. It has just enough stitches to be grabby and to hold on. So get rid of those guys. And our pattern calls for 40 stitches. However, I'm going to cast on 41. I'm going to show you 2 of my favorite hacks. So use your favorite cast on method. I'm going to start with a slip knot, and then I'm going to use what I call, I think it's technically called the twisted thumb cast on. It's a long tail cast on. I've also heard it the twisted German thumb. It is the method I was shown. If you do the regular long tail where you doop 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 whatever the heck and pull, that never worked for me. It doesn't work for me. So what I learned on was the twisted German thumb. You use your favorite method, just make sure that it is not too tight. And I'm going to cast on 41 stitches. That first one was my slip stitch. So I'm going to cast on all of the stitches that I'll need here. And I'm not going too tight. Long tail cast on can be a little bit stretchy, which is nice. Just make sure you don't want to have the edge of your wrist warmers so tight that nobody can get them on over their hand. So I'm going to cast on 41 stitches. 38, 39, 40, 41. Cut this off here, about here. Okay, so now we have our 41 stitches cast onto one needle. And I'm going to turn my work and knit onto the next of 3 stitches. So one other thing you want to think about is how you're going to divide up your stitches. It is a 40 total, but the pattern as we get going forward, it's going to be a 3x1 rib, which is knit 3, purl 1, a 4-stitch repeat. So I want to make sure that however I divide up my stitches are divisible by 4. So for me, I'm going to do 12 stitches, and 16 to equal the 40. So for here, we're going to go right into the pattern stitch as if we had already joined, and we are going to knit 1, purl 1, which is what it tells us to do for 1 inch. So I'm going to do this for 12 stitches onto my first needle, knit 1, purl 1, and I'm going to keep going across. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So there's my first needle. Now I will say the first starting of this is still a little fiddly. I'm not going to lie, but it's so worth it, and it's so much better than trying to do it straight casting onto everything. Now we want to make sure these don't get all twisted up and messed around. So I'm going to lightly, anytime you work with needles, no matter how many double points you have going on, you're still only using 2 at a time. You're knitting from one needle onto a new one. This guy's just going to kind of hang out here in the background. I'm going to lightly rest him on my other fingers that are not being used on both hands, back and forth, to kind of keep him out of the way. So then we're just going to do another 12 stitches. knit one, purl one. And he kind of flips around a little bit, but you know what? I've got him resting back here. He's not dropping out. There's no stitches falling off. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm just kind of letting him hang out there out of the way. If he does hang down a little bit, no biggie. He's not going anywhere. No worries. So let's get across and just go a little slower than usual as you're starting. And do. I kind of get that out of the way here. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I need 2 more stitches. 11 and 12. Now, I want to make sure each time I finish one of these, I'm moving the stitches to the center of my double point. Now I've got these 2 that are good. I still need to get 1 more going. So I'm going to, on my left hand, my lower hand, in between my pinky and my ring finger, I'm just letting that kind of rest there. So I'm holding that one out of the way. This guy is just going to hang out here. He's got the stitches in there. He's not going anywhere. And the new double point needle, I'm going to hold on to, see, he's back out of the way. Harder to do as I talk. And then we're going to knit the 16 stitches across here. And we're knitting and purling as usual in the pattern. So I'm just going to keep on going. The first few are going to feel weird because you've got these other needles feel like they're in the way, but they're really not. You're still only using 2 needles at a time. So here I'm going to knit and purl across 16 stitches while these other guys are just staying out of the way. And nobody's getting twisted, nothing's happening, nothing's falling off the stitches. It's actually not bad at all. So as we get across, now remember, I cast on an extra stitch. I cast on 41 stitches, even though the pattern called for 40. And a lot of people like to do, when they get to that last stitch, I don't know if I can talk and knit at the same time here. Let's see. Excuse me. So let me get across and then we'll figure out this last stitch. Okay, so here are my stitches and I've got this one last little stitch. I'm going to scoop him onto the new needle and I'm going to stick him on to the beginning of the first stitch. So we're wanting to make sure these are they're not twisted. And this extra little stitch that we'd cast on, I'm going to put onto my first needle here next to on needle 1. So we're going to be going around and around and around this way. Then a lot of people like to just pull this over as if you were and drop off as if you were binding off that extra stitch. But I really like a strong start to my in the round projects. I am tough on my knits. I wear them, I tug them, I do all the things. I want this to be a super strong stitch, the first stitch of putting things in the round. So what I'm going to do is knit together 1 stitch onto my new needle, the first stitch of needle 1 plus that extra stitch that we cast on and we just slipped over there. Knit that together as if it's the first stitch. And then if you'd like to use stitch markers, this is where you're going to put, this is where you're going to put your stitch marker in. So it's going to be after the first stitch of your first needle. And we're going to follow the pattern, tells us to knit 1, purl 1 for 1, I think for an inch on the design. And we're just going around and knitting and purling. And let me get across this needle and show you our start to an awesome wrist warmer, which is such a fun way to use up that yarn that you've got left over and make it something awesome that you can use, that you can give away. It's always awesome to have a few of these extra ready to go as a gift. And now what you're going to do is just keep going around and around and around, and you're going to grow a fabulous knitted, stretchy, fun, warm wrist warmer. Well, I hope my tips help you and enjoy your knitting. So the pattern that I use is called DK Treasures Wrist Warmers. It is one I finally wrote up. The cool thing about this pattern is it can be used with DK weight, with worsted weight. I've also got a sock weight version coming out. And the thing is, you can knit them in the round, like I showed you, which is my favorite. I love making these things in the round. They are like potato chips. You can't stop with one. You have to make 42 or 44 or 48. Just keep going. Everyone loves wrist warmers. When my kids were young, I used to make them as extra holiday gifts for the teachers. And then word got out, and then all of the teachers wanted them. So be prepared to make a bunch. But it is such a fun way to use up extra yarn. It's super easy. And the great thing is you can knit them in the round the way I love to, or you can knit them flat and seam up the side and just leave that little thumb hole. They're super easy. They're not restrictive to wear. You can read your favorite book. You can knit while you're wearing them if it's a little chilly. It's just a little fun thing that men, women, kids, everybody can use. So I hope you love my new idea for how to use up some of that leftover yarn. And I'd love to hear, what are your favorite projects for that? Do you do big blankets? Do you do scarves? I have a really fun crochet one that uses 1,000,000 bits of leftover sock yarn coming soon, and I can't wait to show you. Hope everybody's doing great. Have a great day. Keep on knitting and yarn on.